The official Irish Republican Army, or official IRA, was an Irish Republican paramilitary group whose goal was to remove Northern Ireland from the United Kingdom and create a workers' republic, encompassing all of Ireland. It emerged in December 1969, shortly after the beginning of the Troubles, when the Irish Republican Army split into two factions. The other was the Provisional IRA.Each continued to call itself simply the IRA and rejected the other's legitimacy. Unlike the Provisionals, the officials were Marxist and worked to form a united front with other Irish communist groups, named the Irish National Liberation Front. The officials were called the NLF by the Provisionals and were sometimes nicknamed the Red IRA by others. It waged a limited campaign against the British Army, mainly involving shooting and bombing attacks on troops in urban working-class neighborhoods. Most notably, it was involved in the 1970 Falls Curfew and carried out the 1972 Aldershot bombing. In May 1972, it declared a ceasefire and vowed to limit its actions to defense and retaliation. By this time, the Provisional IRA had become the larger and more active faction. Following the ceasefire, the IRA began to be referred to as Group B within the official movement. It became involved in feuds with the Provisional IRA and the Irish National Liberation Army, an IRA splinter group formed in 1974. It has also been involved in organized crime and vigilantism. The official IRA was linked to the political party official Sinn Féin, later renamed Sinn Féin, the Workers' Party, and then the Workers' Party of Ireland. The split in the Republican movement, 1969–1970, the shift to the left, the split in the Irish Republican Army, soon followed by a parallel split in Sinn Féin, was the result of the dissatisfaction of more traditional and militant Republicans at the political direction taken by the leadership. The particular object of the discontent was Sinn Féin's ending of its policy of abstentionism in the Republic of Ireland. This issue is a key one in Republican ideology, as traditional Republicans regarded the Irish state as illegitimate and maintained that the loyalty was due only to the Irish Republic declared in 1916 and in the view represented by the IRA Army Council. During the 1960s, the Republican movement under the leadership of Cathal Goulding radically reassessed their ideology and tactics after the dismal failure of the IRA's border campaign in the years 1956 to 62. They were heavily influenced by Popular Front ideology and drew close to communist thinking. A key intermediary body was the Communist Party of Great Britain's Organisation for Irish Exiles, the Connelly Association. The Marxist analysis was that the conflict in Northern Ireland was a bourgeois nationalist one between the Ulster Protestant and Irish Catholic working classes, fomented and continued by the ruling class. Its effect was to depress wages, since worker could be set against worker. They concluded that the first step on the road to a 32-county socialist republic in Ireland was the democratization of Northern Ireland and radicalization of the southern working class. This would allow class politics to develop, eventually resulting in a challenge to the hegemony of both what they termed British imperialism and the respective unionist and Irish nationalist establishments north and south of the Irish border. Goulding and those close to him argued that, in the context of sectarian division in Northern Ireland, a military campaign against the British presence would be counterproductive, since it would delay the day when the workers would unite around social and economic issues. The sense that the IRA seemed to be drifting away from its conventional Republican and nationalist roots into Marxism angered more traditional Republicans. The radicals viewed Ulster Protestants with unionist views as fellow Irishmen deluded by bourgeois loyalties. who needed to be engaged in dialectical debate. As a result, they were reluctant to use force to defend Catholic areas of Belfast when they came under attack from Ulster loyalists, a role the IRA had performed since the 1920s. Since the Northern Ireland Civil Rights Association marches began in 1968, there had been many cases of street violence. The Royal Ulster Constabulary had been shown on television in undisciplined baton charges, and had already killed 3 non-combatant civilians, 1 a child. The Orange Order's marching season during the summer of 1969 had been characterized by violence on both sides, which culminated in the 3-day Battle of the Bogside in Derry. August 1969 riots. The critical moment came in August 1969 when there was a major outbreak of intercommunal violence in Belfast and Derry, with 8 deaths, 6 of them Catholics, and whole streets ablaze. On 14-15 August, loyalists burned out several Catholic streets in Belfast in the Northern Ireland riots of August 1969. IRA units offered resistance. However, very few weapons were available for the defense of Catholic areas. Many local IRA figures, and ex-IRA members such as Joe Cahill and Billy McGee, were incensed by what they saw as the leadership's decision not to take sides, and in September, they announced that they would no longer be taking orders from the Goulding leadership. Discontent was not confined to the Northern IRA units. In the South also, such figures as Rory O'Brady and Sean McStay opposed both the leadership's proposed recognition of Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. This increasing political divergence led to a formal split at the 1969 IRA convention held in December, when a group led by O'Brady and McStay walked out. The split resulted from a vote at the first IRA convention where a 2/3 majority voted that Republicans should take the seats if elected to the British, Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland parliaments. At a second convention, a group consisting of McStay, Davy O'Connell, O'Brady, Joe Cahill, Paddy Mulcahy, Leo Martin, and Sean Tracy, were elected as the Provisional Army Council. The supporters included Seamus Twomey. Accounts at the time suggest that the IRA members split roughly in half, with those loyal to the Goulding-led official IRA prominent in some areas while the Provisional IRA were prominent in others. IRA historian J. Bowyer Bell stated, with respect to the Provisional IRA, there was some support in Belfast, although less than claimed. A strong area for the official IRA in Belfast was the Lower Falls and Markets district, which were under the command of Billy Macmillan. Other IRA units were located in Derry, Newry, Strabane, Dublin, and Wicklow and other parts of Belfast. However, the Provisionals would rapidly become the dominant faction, both as a result of intensive recruitment in response to the sectarian violence and because some official IRA units later defected to them. There was a similar ideological split in Sinn Féin after a contentious 1970s Sinn Féin Ard Fios. The leadership of Sinn Féin passed a motion to recognise the parliaments in London, Dublin and Stormont, but failed to attain the prerequisite 2/3 majority necessary to change Sinn Féin's constitutional opposition to partitionist assemblies. Those defeated in the motion walked out. This resulted in a split into 2 groups with the Sinn Féin name. Those supportive of Sean McStay's Provisional Army Council were referred to in the media as Provisional Sinn Féin or Sinn Féin Kevin Street, and contested elections as Sinn Féin. The other group, under the leadership of Thomas Macgiolla, was to contest elections first as official Sinn Féin, then Sinn Féin the Workers' Party, and aligned itself with the official IRA, as the Marxist faction had come to be known. The party retained the historic Sinn Féin headquarters of Gardner Street, thus giving legitimacy to its claim, in the eyes of some, to be the legitimate successor of that party. It was briefly known popularly as Sinn Féin Gardner Place. The officials were known as the Stickies because they sold stick-on lilies to commemorate the Easter Rising. The Provisionals, by contrast, were known as Pinnies because they produced pinned-on lilies. The term Stickies stuck, although Pinnies disappeared, in favor of the nickname Provos, and for a time, Provies. Impact of the split. Initially there was much confusion among Republicans on the ground. Martin McGuinness, for example, joined the official IRA in 1970, unaware that there had been a split, and only later joined the Provisionals. The Provisionals eventually extended their armed campaign from defense of Catholic areas. Despite the reluctance of Cathal Goulding and the IRA leadership, the volunteers on the ground were inevitably drawn into the violence. The official IRA's first major confrontation with the British Army came in the Falls Curfew of July 1970, when over 3,000 British soldiers raided the Lower Falls area for arms, leading to 3 days of gun battles. The official IRA lost a large amount of weaponry, and the members on the ground blamed the Provisionals for starting the firing and then leaving them alone to face the British. The bad feeling left by this and other incidents led to a feud between the two IRAs in 1970, with several shootings carried out by either side. The two IRA factions arranged a truce between them after the IRA killing of Provisional activist and Belfast Brigade D Company commander Charlie Hughes. Soviet defector Vasily Mitrokhin alleged in the 1990s that the Goulding leadership sought, in 1969, a small quantity of arms from the KGB. The request was approved and the weapons reportedly arrived in Ireland in 1972, although this has not been independently verified. On the whole, the IRA had a more restricted level of activity than the Provisionals. Unlike the Provisionals, it did not establish de facto control over large Catholic areas of Belfast and Derry, and its use of force was more defensive. However, it retained a strong presence in certain localities, notably the Lower Falls Road, Andersonstown, Turf Lodge and the Markets areas of Belfast, along with a strong presence in Derry as well as Newry and South County Down. Paramilitary Campaign. While the IRA occasionally fought the British Army and the RUC throughout 1970, they did not have a strong paramilitary presence until early 1971. In August 1971, after the introduction of internment without trial, IRA units fought numerous gun battles with British troops who were deployed to arrest suspected Republicans. The official IRA company in the Markets area of Belfast, led by Joe McCann, held off an incursion into the area by over 600 British troops. In December 1971, the official IRA killed Ulster Unionist Party Senator John Barnhill at his home in Strabane. This was the first murder of a politician in Ireland since the assassination of Free State Minister for Justice Kevin O'Higgins in 1927. In February 1972, the organization also made an attempt on the life of UUP politician John Taylor. On Bloody Sunday, an IRA man in Derry is believed by the Savile Inquiry to have fired a shot with a revolver at British troops. After they had shot dead 13 civil rights demonstrators, the only Republican shots fired on the day and contrary to his orders. The anger caused by Bloody Sunday among Irish people was such that the official IRA announced that it would launch an offensive against British forces. However, the IRA declared a ceasefire later in the same year. The ceasefire on the 30th of May followed a number of armed actions which had been politically damaging. The organization bombed the Aldershot headquarters of the Parachute Regiment, but killed only 6 civilians and a Roman Catholic army chaplain. After the killing of William Best, a Catholic British soldier home on leave in Derry, the IRA declared a ceasefire. In addition, the death of several militant IRA figures such as Joe McCann in confrontations with British soldiers enabled the Goulding leadership to call off their armed campaign, which it had never supported wholeheartedly. After 1972, although formally on ceasefire since 1972, the official IRA continued some attacks on British forces up until mid-1973, killing 7 British soldiers in what it termed retaliatory attacks. In addition, the OIRA's weapons were used intermittently in the ongoing feud with the Provisionals. This flared up into violence on several occasions, notably in October 1975. 11 Republicans on either side were killed in the feud, and a 9-year-old girl was shot dead by the Provisionals when they tried to shoot her father. In 1974, radical elements within the organization who objected to the ceasefire, led by Seamus Costello, established the Irish National Liberation Army. Another feud ensued in the first half of 1975, during which 3 IRA and 5 IRA members were killed. The dead included prominent members of both organizations, including Costello and the IRA OC, Billy Macmillan. However, from the mid-1970s onwards, the official Republican movement became increasingly focused on achieving its aims through left-wing constitutional politics. This did not stop sporadic paramilitary activity from the IRA, who on 8 September 1979 killed Hugh O'Halloran in a punishment beating in the Ballymurphy area of Belfast. O'Halloran was beaten to death with hurley sticks. The 2 IRA men who carried out the killing turned themselves into the RUC. Both were convicted and sentenced to imprisonment in the maze. The army lost a number of members who gradually drifted away from the ceasefire up to shortly after the 1981 hunger strike, many either joining the Provisional IRA or the IRA, some simply dropping out. From 1981 on, Sinn Féin, the Workers' Party, renamed the Workers' Party the following year, had some success in the Republic of Ireland, but little in the north. Throughout the 1980s, allegations that the official IRA remained in existence and was engaged in criminal activity appeared in the Irish press. In June 1982, the feud with the IRA flared again after IRA member James Flynn, the alleged assassin of Seamus Costello, was shot dead by the IRA in Dublin. In December 1985, 5 men, including Anthony McDonagh, pleaded guilty to charges of conspiracy to defraud the Inland Revenue in Northern Ireland. McDonagh was described in court as an official IRA commander. In February 1992, a British Spotlight programme alleged that the official IRA was still active and involved in widespread racketeering and armed robberies. These eventually proved a considerable political embarrassment to the Workers' Party, and in 1992 the leadership proposed amendments to the party constitution which would, inter alia, effectively allow it to purge members suspected of involvement in the official IRA. This proposal failed to obtain the required 2/3 support at the party conference that year, and as a result the leadership, including 6 of the party's 7 members of Dáil Éireann, left to establish a new party, later named Democratic Left. In 1995, some former official IRA members in the Newry area launched a refounded Official Republican movement. This group was believed to have engaged in attacks on drug dealers in the Newry area in the late 1990s. In 1997, violence erupted between the ORM and the IRA. 2 ORM members and 2 Untitled supporters were injured in separate gun attacks. There have been allegations of criminality against former senior official IRA figure Sean Garland, who was accused in 2005 by the United States of helping to produce and circulate counterfeit US dollars allegedly printed in North Korea. Decommissioning. In October 2009, after a long period of inactivity, the official IRA began talks with a view to decommissioning its stockpile of weapons, and in February 2010 the Newry-based official Republican movement announced that the process was complete. The process was confirmed to be completed by the Independent International Commission on Decommissioning on 8 February 2010, coming in the last 24 hours of the Commission's existence. The decommissioning was completed at the same time as that of the Republican INLA and the Loyalist UDA Southeast Antrim Brigade. The step was described by British Prime Minister Gordon Brown as a central part of moving Northern Ireland from violence to peace. In 2015, it was reported that up to 5,000 official IRA weapons may still be hidden in secret bunkers. The weapons were allegedly supplied to the IRA in the 1980s by the Soviet Union's KGB and by North Korea. The report said that the weapons were to be used to defend Catholic areas if there was an outbreak of major sectarian conflict, and that the plan was known only to a few high-ranking members of the organization. Deaths as a result of activity. According to Malcolm Sutton's Index of Deaths from the Conflict in Ireland, part of the conflict archive on the Internet, the IRA was responsible for at least 50 killings during the Troubles. According to the book Lost Lives, it was responsible for 57 killings. Of those killed by the IRA, 22 were civilians, including 4 civilian political activists. 19 were former members of the British security forces, including 15 British soldiers and 1 former soldier, 3 RUC officers. 8 were former members of Republican paramilitaries. 1 was a UDA member. The Kane database says there were 27 IRA members killed during the conflict, while Lost Lives says there were 35 killed.